I see the color I've known all my life. We are timeless. We are timeless. Waves washing over the sand on my feet. Time is an ocean and I'm lost at sea. Tomorrow won't find us, but I still believe. Searching for you is looking for me. We are timeless. We are timeless. We are timeless. We are timeless. You are water, I am frozen. Skies are moving, I'm standing still. In the shadows of your twilight, I am falling. I am falling. I am falling. When nights last forever and days run away, the world makes us fly by into the gray. With every season, every change, you'll be the sunlight I feel on my face. We are timeless. 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 I am frozen. We are timeless. Moving, I'm standing still. We are timeless. Shadows of your twilight. We are timeless. You are the summer, we were the tide, the clearest of azure, bright as your eyes, golden skin sundress, you were the skies, and I see the color I've known all my life. We are timeless. We are timeless. Waves washing over the sand on my feet. Time is an ocean and I'm lost at sea. Tomorrow won't find us, but I still believe. Searching for you is looking for me. We are timeless. We are timeless. We are timeless. We are timeless. You are water, I am frozen. Skies are moving, I'm standing still. In the shadows of your twilight, I am falling. I am falling. I am falling. When nights last forever and days run away, the world makes us fly by into the
Hello, I'm Susan Allen, National President and the CEO of the U.S. Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation. Welcome to Live Talk. 2020 was rough and tough. The country experienced devastating incidents in health and economic disaster. The nation's small businesses have suffered closure, and some of them will never come back again. Back in March 2020, the CARES Act was enacted into law, which brought major relief to the country, and we thought we were on our way back to some normalcy. However, we did not know that COVID-19, the pandemic, will stay with us for such a long time. We struggled, and finally, after months and months of waiting and trying to deal with a new way of life, a bipartisan new COVID Relief Act was enacted into law. In the last week or so, the Small Business Administration and community organizations that help small and minority businesses, together with some business consultancy firms and law firms, have been advertising and promoting webinars about how to apply for Draw 1 and Draw 2 of the new COVID-19 Relief Act. You will hear a lot about the mechanics of how to apply, who qualifies, who do not qualify. But today we have a person who is a 25-year veteran in the United States Congress, who knows how laws are made, who knows how a Republican and Democratic Congress can come together and work towards a common goal. We have with us today Sean Moore, the staff director for Senator Cardin from Maryland. He is the incoming chairman of the Senate Small Business Committee and Entrepreneurship. He's going to give you a good dose of how the Americans Congress make law that will ultimately help to take America's small and minority businesses back onto the road to recovery. Sean, welcome to Live Talk. Say hello.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you today.
Sean, I have, let's jump right into it. Would you tell us from your perch as a 25-year veteran in Congress, how did it happen that the Democratic and Republican Congress, who've been so rancorous in the last 4 years, can come together and make a decision and pass this new COVID-19 law, which would bring billions of dollars into the economy and try to jumpstart all of us all over again?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great question. Again, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. As you say, 2020 has been a terrible year for small businesses. It's been the shutdown orders and the ongoing COVID pandemic has really caused so much pain throughout the country. I work, as you mentioned, I work for the Senate Small Business Committee. I work for the Democratic side. Our committee is made up of 19 senators. We have 10 Republicans and 9 Democrats right now. And our chairman on the Republican side is Senator Marco Rubio. On January 20th of this year, Senator Cardin will take over as the chairman of the committee when the new Democratic senators from Georgia are sworn in and when the Biden administration is inaugurated next Wednesday. The good news is that the Small Business Committee has historically been one of the most bipartisan committees on Capitol Hill. For a long time, Republicans and Democrats have worked very well together, and that really proved to be the case last year when we were developing the COVID relief packages. Why is this? Well, it's because if there's small businesses have the support of the American people in red states and blue states. Everybody supports small business, and that's why our committee is as bipartisan as it is. Back in March, our committee was tasked with writing the first title of the CARES Act, which focused on small businesses. And our biggest challenge at the time was, how do we get money into the ecosystem as quickly as possible? And we came up with a couple of brand new programs in order to do just that. By far the largest of these programs was the PPP program, or the Paycheck Protection Program. And we recognized pretty early on that we were going to need the help of the banking institutions in order to get that money out there as quickly as possible, because there was simply no other federal mechanism that would be able to get money into the hands of the small businesses that needed it most. And so what we did was built it on the back of the existing 7A SBA loan program, which is the flagship loan program that many of your members are already familiar with. And so what we did, we wanted to create, we wanted to make it as much of a grant as possible. So we allowed for, once you got your loan, which was based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, as long as you used, the loan largely for payroll purposes, you would get that loan forgiven, and that was the point of the program. What ended up happening is that the pandemic did not go away in the summer, and we recognized that we needed to pass additional assistance. Unfortunately, I know my boss was Senator Cardin is very disappointed that we weren't able to enact additional aid until December. That additional aid should have come much sooner. But in December, we did authorize second draw PPP loans for businesses that are, a little bit more targeted than the previous program. The employee size has been reduced to 300 employees. Small businesses need to show a 25% revenue reduction. We did expand it for certain nonprofits that weren't eligible before. And that program recently opened up on Monday in a limited basis for the smallest banking institutions, such as community financial institutions, CDFIs, MDIs, organizations like that. Back in March, when we were putting this together, we understood that there were going to be small businesses that didn't have the traditional banking relationships and would be put at a disadvantage. And that's one reason why we urged that the SBA emergency injury disaster loan program be established so that it could provide very low cost loans, direct loans that are outside of the banking relationships to small businesses. And on top of that, provide a grant of up to $10,000 for small businesses that they could get immediately. What we wrote in the law was within 3 days. Unfortunately, a lot of those, the grants weren't as high as we wanted them to be. That because of a lack of funding. There was also a cap put on the loan amount. And I don't think that program could have worked a little bit better than it did. But it did provide a lot of relief to millions of small businesses. In this most recent version of the legislation in December, we also added a special program for shuttered live venues because they have had difficulty operating at all under the pandemic. We have assistance for movie theaters and museums. This is a brand new program that provides grants up to $10 million for those that have been the hardest hit. And that program isn't open yet, but I know the SBA is working very hard to get that program up and running. We also have a program that doesn't get as much press as some of the others, but back in March, we passed a law that said if you have an existing 7A or 504 loan, a community advantage loan, microcredit loan, the federal government will pay for 6 months of principal and interest on that loan because of the pandemic. The most recent law that we passed in December extends that program for additional 3 months. But because of we didn't have as much funding as we wanted to work with in our committee, that assistance is capped at $9,000 a month. And finally, in this most recent version of the of the law, we for the normal 7A 504 Community Advantage programs, we waive all lender and borrower fees for those loans, and we increase the guarantee amount because we want to make sure that small businesses have access to as much capital as possible. So that's a pretty broad overview of the programs that we have responsibility for in the COVID relief packages. And we'll be working very closely with both the outgoing administration and the incoming administration to make sure that those funds are dispersed as efficiently as possible.
Yes, Sean, is that deadline for applying for these loans? Is it March 31st and everything has to get in? It's not a very big window for them to get those loans in.
No, and that's true. It does. The program does sunset on March 31st, but it'll open up to additional borrowers this coming Monday beyond the community financial institutions. That's SBA has said that additional smaller community lenders will be eligible to process loans for first and second draw loans. Mm-hmm. And so the program is expanding. You'll recall back in when we did it in March, the program, which was designed to last 2.5 months, ran out of money in 13 days. So we want to make sure we prevent a repeat of that and allow the smaller financial institutions to get access to it. We also included a carve out to make sure that we fenced off some of the money for small businesses with 10 or fewer employees so that they can get access to the program.
That's right. The good thing about it is that many of the small businesses who are hard hitters, have nowhere else to go. As I said earlier at the beginning, that they have already shuttered, gone out of business, and it's going to take some time for them to get back on their feet and then onto the road to recovery. So we hope that Senator Cardin will, with your help, and take a good look at perhaps extending the time when, if necessary, more relief may be made available to them. And in that regard, I'm just wondering whether once the senator gets into the chairmanship, would he be looking at a further increase in relief to the community in the event that this second round may not be able to cover all the losses and devastation that the small and minority businesses have experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. Senator Cardin does support additional COVID relief. We're hoping that we can get that done very early in this Congress. Obviously, we'll need to work with the incoming administration on the details, and with our Republican counterparts, of course, and our House counterparts, which I should have mentioned, were very helpful in drafting both of these COVID bills that we did in the last Congress. But Senator Cardin's focus from day one on the committee has been helping underserved small businesses. That's been his focus from the beginning. That was his focus during the COVID relief talks. And that's going to be his focus moving forward. And so that is what he's very interested in. I know he's also interested in trying to get additional assistance to state and local governments so that they can help small businesses directly too, because different parts of the country need different types of assistance when it comes to small business. I know that the President-elect Biden is going to be making a speech tonight, at least he's scheduled to, around 7 o'clock hour Eastern, to lay out some of his priorities for COVID relief. And so we'll be watching that very carefully as well. Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Small Business Administration plays a large role in this. And back in March, you were given a big hat to wear. And really, their budget and their jurisdiction has expanded a lot. And we see that the regulation that were written to implement CARES Act had been amended about 6 or 7 times, all the way up to August last year. And hopefully this time, with the experience under our belt, it will be a lot better. I'm just wondering that whether there are anything in within the Small Business Administration's operations that the senator may want to also take a good look at, whether he want to expand some of the programs or shrink some of the programs. Would you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's actually, you raise a really good point, because it's really remarkable what the Small Business Administration has been able to do this year. You have to recognize that this is an agency with just a little over 3,000 employees, and with a budget that's less than $1 billion. They are really one of the smallest organizations in the federal government. You know, what they've been able, and because of the work of the small business committees, we've given them the ability to get $1 trillion out into the economy. So if you think about such a small agency being in charge of such a large amount of money, they've done incredible work to get this money out the door. They've done, whether it's in their disaster office, which is in charge of the EIDL loans, or whether it's their CAP access program, which was charged with setting up the PPP program. They've done an incredible job of getting this money out the door. One of the challenges that they have is, typically when we set up brand new programs in the federal government, there's a lengthy rulemaking process. We didn't have time for that when it came to the CARES Act, because we needed to get the money in the pockets of small businesses as quickly as possible. And as a result, it was a very difficult process, where they were almost writing the rules as they were implementing the program, and fine-tuning it along the way. And that made, that was, very difficult for them to do. It was also very difficult for the banking institutions and the small businesses to follow the rules as they were being implemented. It was a, incredibly complex situation. The good news is that the SBA has 68 district offices that are out there that are able to help small businesses. We have small business development centers that are standing by out in the, throughout the country, that are ready to help small businesses navigate these, admittedly complicated programs. We have women's business centers that exist. And we were happy to have 2 brand new ones in Maryland very recently. That are able to, they don't just help women business owners, they help everybody. So, anybody can go there and get assistance there as well. So there are resources out there. We have veterans business centers as well. So these are, we also provided assistance to these organizations so that they could, help small businesses navigate these programs. And moving forward, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, well, what I just wanted to say was, moving forward, in the 117th Congress, we want to look at ways that we can help, improve the tools that the SBA has to, help small businesses, not just with COVID, but there's going to be a lengthy recovery process as well. We recognize it's been, it's a long time to be devastated by a pandemic, and small businesses are going to need help, way beyond March 31st. They're going to need, help for the foreseeable future in rebounding. And one of the things that we care a lot about here on the Small Business Committee is that we don't want to see a growing divide between big business and small business. It's very important to us that small businesses are able to compete on a level playing field. They have, the big businesses have so many more advantages over small businesses that, but yet small businesses are is so important to our economy, that when we have situations like this, whether it's the pandemic or whether if you go back to the, financial crisis of, 2008, we see that it's harder for small businesses to rebound from these economic catastrophes. And we want to be able to help them, moving forward as well.
That's right. Speaking on behalf of the small business community, which is the bulk of our membership, at our organization, the U.S. Pan Asian American Chamber of Commerce, we work with other diverse business organizations, the U.S. Black Chamber, which is a partner of ours, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, as well as the women's organizations. And in that regard, I'm just wondering whether you can make a couple of minutes, take a couple of minutes to talk about the relationship between the SBA's program and also the Department of Commerce and Minority Business Development Program, if you would. At CARES Act 1, I think $10 billion were set aside, also appropriated for the MBDA. What would the 117th Congress look like in terms of this COVID relief draw to?
Yeah, the the Minority Business Development Agency plays obviously an important role, but I think that there's even more that they can do with some congressional support. This is an agency that's not part of the Small Business Administration. They're actually part of the Department of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that people don't realize about MBDA is that they're actually not authorized in law. They are, they've been created by an executive order from the 1970s. And one of the things that we want to do one of the things that Senator Cardin wants to do is to actually authorize the MBDA as an agency. And so that they have the standing and regular appropriations and a regular authorization so that they can, help small businesses moving forward, including at their business centers. Our current administration, was looking to, really, their budget requests over the last 4 years, dramatically cut MBDA and their business centers specifically. We fought very hard to maintain that funding, and Congress was able to maintain that funding on a bipartisan basis, which is very good. But looking ahead to the 117th Congress, we want to work, in a bipartisan way to try to, to provide them with more resources, but also, formalize them in law. And that's one of our priorities moving forward.
What's the prospect of that happening?
Well, I think the Biden administration is going to be supportive of this. I know that there's support in both houses on the to a certain extent, and it's just going to be a matter of working hard to try to make the proposals bipartisan and getting them across the finish line. So it's the start of a new Congress, and we're always optimistic at the start of a new Congress.
Great. Well, let me turn to a different angle, Sean. For the COVID-19, the most hurt businesses are small and minority businesses, those who are customer facing, who are in the front line. And this CARES Act 1 and now round 2 hopefully will bring them back into some sense of normalcy, and it's going to take some time. Some says that it can take about for some industries take about 4 years for them to get back on their feet. However, we also are looking forward to the federal government expanding its program on infrastructure, including the telecommunications sector, and many of that involve federal contracting. And if I could ask you to comment on how do we make sure that the small business community who are in the federal contracting space will truly be able to participate in meaningful doing business in the federal sector by having the ability to bid for large federal contracts. There is this concept of contract bundling, or they call contract consolidation and contract rationalization, in the name of efficiency and not using a lot of suppliers. Many federal contractors, federal agency, and the corporations are reducing the number of suppliers they use. Okay, and therefore squeeze out a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses. Is there anything that the Senator Cardin could do to bring relief to the nation's small businesses, particularly those who are looking to contract with the federal government? And that will be an example for the corporate community follow suit.
Yeah, one of the most important things that the Small Business Administration does is making sure that small businesses get their fair share of federal contracts. We have established goals that have been in place for some time. They say that 23% of all federal contracts should go to small businesses. We have other set-asides also for women-owned small businesses, disadvantaged small businesses, disabled veteran small businesses, hub zones, which are distressed areas throughout the country that also need their fair share of federal contracting dollars, and the hub zones in particular have not reached a relatively small 3% goal in recent years. So there's a couple of things that we really need to do. first we need to look and see if those goals are the appropriate, at the appropriate levels, and study whether or not we ought to be increasing those goals as a start. Second thing we need to do is address the issues that you raised about bundling. We have found that even when the federal government is meeting their goals, they're doing so with fewer small businesses. So we want to not just increase the dollar amount that's going to small business contractors. We also want to diversify the number of small businesses that are getting federal contracts, and that's a very very important issue for Senator Cardin. We want to make sure that the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, these are offices that are within the various federal agencies. We want to make sure that they're being aggressive in making sure that the contracting officials are looking at small businesses and making sure that they're eligible for some of these federal contracts that are going out the door. We also want to look at and they're charged by law to focus on bundling, by the way. I mean, that is actually something that's written in law, that they have to, make sure that that these contracts aren't being bundled to get around the small business goals. And then finally, we want to increase the set aside, the limits on the set aside contracts for for small businesses, for the disadvantaged small businesses. We want to make sure that we look at that as well. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to contracting, and make sure that there's again, a level playing field, and making sure that they have opportunity for contracts, especially if the 117th Congress is able to pass a major infrastructure bill, which we're all hopeful that we'll be able to do here.
Indeed, my organization and our leadership look forward to working with the Senator's office and bring to the surface much more robust discussion on this particular issue, because it's the United States federal government which is the biggest buyer, and everybody has an eye on the federal government. And even with the office of the different agency, they have good intentions, but sometimes the hands are tied. They cannot, if they cannot convince the actual program managers and purchasing decision makers in the, let's say, the Defense Department, which is notorious for that. I may be stepping on some toes by saying so, but my members are telling me that they're not getting through that door. They know they have the capability, but they're stopped by the decision makers who have certain old practices, some legacy supplier that they want to use. And so therefore, for the Senator's office to bring the small business community in and discuss at the same table with the large corporation would be very useful. So please, I appeal to you, and later, hopefully, when we get a chance to meet with Senator Cardin, to bring small businesses to the table with the large corporation, the Fortune 50, 100, 500 companies who are doing business with the federal government as a federal contractor, to include them and have truly meaningful discussion on how to crack that door open. Because some of the federal minority and small businesses, they reach a certain point where they stay in the no man's land. They cannot go any further, and they are forced to either sell, and that would totally defeat the purpose of the small business and minority business program.
Yeah, you're right about that. We are, also focused on making sure that as that there isn't that sort of once you get too big and you don't want to fall off a cliff and not get access. One of the things that we did in this most recent law was for the 8A program, we added a provision in there to give 8A firms an extra year in the program because of COVID. So that was something else that we did to try to help on the contracting side. We also there's this thing called category management too, which we were taking a close look at to see if that is excluding certain small business firms. So that's something that we want to look at in the upcoming Congress as well.
Exactly. That's exactly the problem. Great, wonderful. Sean, finally, before you leave us, thank you for taking the time. I know the inauguration next week. Today is the only day we can grab you, so with very short notice to the public, we have this opportunity to have a conversation with you. Is there any messages that would like to leave with our audience and our viewers, because this broadcast will be replayed over and over again. I hope that more will hear from you. And if you have any sage advice and direction you can give to our viewers and audience, please.
Well, we really appreciate, the feedback we've received from your organization on what, took place throughout 2020. We really rely on your feedback and advice and helping to craft the, the provisions that we write in law. I mean, these senators, one of the nice things about our committee is that we have, especially our 9 Democrats on the committee. These are senators that really care deeply about small businesses. They have a lot of experience on the committee. Many are small business owners, in the past themselves. A lot of them requested specifically to sit on the small business committee. So they're very anxious to find, to learn how these programs are working out in the field. We've gotten feedback already, and we got feedback back in March that a lot of the the underserved and underbanked were being left out of the program, and we tried to put provisions in the December law to fix that. One of the things that we didn't do in March was require SBA to add demographic questions to their application form. We thought that they would just do that because it's, in the normal 7A program they have it, but they didn't have that. So it didn't get, we had a hard time understanding, getting the data that we needed to understand where were these loans getting to? Were they getting into the hands of minority business owners? Were they getting into the hands of women, small business owners? It's very difficult for us. So that's something that we fixed on the forgiveness form. We require that on the forgiveness form. We require that for the second draw loans, and we're going to require that for, even first draw loans moving forward. So the more feedback we get about how these programs are working, the better we can, fine tune them as we go into the future. Because as you said, a lot of these, so many small businesses are going to need help for the foreseeable future, that this isn't obviously the last COVID package that's going to be enacted. So we want to, continue to make these programs work as best they can.
Great. Yes. As you said earlier, I think that small business is important. Many say it's the backbone of the U.S. economy. And we know that in the 15 years I've been in this job here, I know that the small businesses, at least the groups that I've been involved with, they are the laboratory of innovation. There are more patents filed by small business owners than other sectors. Okay, so it is important that we keep them up and keep them encouraged and give them the relief they need. It is so important, therefore, that the 117 Congress paid due attention to lift the small business up so that there will be more innovation, more job creation. They're the one who actually mortgage a home, take the children's college fund, and go into business. They took the risk, not others. I want to thank you, Sean, for helping us out with this, and hope that you come back again once this draw 2 and draw 1 and draw 2 of the second round is wholly implemented, and come and tell us again what else will be there for us to share with our members and audience and viewers. Thank you, Sean.
It's great to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience and our viewers for tuning in. Please email to us and tweet this particular event, and also put on your calendar our next live talk on January 25th, doing business with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. You don't want to miss it. This is another federal agency that's good, looking for the opportunity to find small and minority businesses to do business with. See you then.